So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Anderson.
Okay, so now I'm serving a few purposes with that. First off, whenever I go see bands, the younger bands all take selfies from the stage, so this makes me feel like 20 years younger already. Second, I now have proof from my wife that I was wearing this. And third, when I told my daughter, who's 6, that I was coming over here, it took her a while to get Rotterdam down. But then, when I told her that a whole bunch of people would be here listening to me talk, just the jaw dropped open so far. Like, she can't imagine people wanting to listen to me. So I can show her that now and yeah, be happy. So I'm here to talk about sample sets that I've created. These are a bunch of really disconnected random samples that I have put up on GitHub because I thought other people might find them useful. I find them useful. They are for general feature testing. They're not for automated testing. They're generally test sets that for some reason you might want to use but manually verify the output. Look at and make sure that in your environment something is working correctly. I've focused on features that I find interesting or that I've had trouble with internally, supporting IBM customers when something comes up. Some of them are general purpose tests that will help you with your customizations. And some of them I've just started to find that as people move into a newer system I've got based on more recent toolkits, seeing markup that I never expected to see, and I've realized that you can do an infinite number of things with DITA markup because you can, elements can nest themselves, which means you can come up with any combination of things. And when people can do something, they tend to do it eventually, wisely or not. So I've added some tests for really weird markup that's gotten people into trouble. And yeah. So what are the tests? There's a list here, but I'll go through them individually. The screen capture on the right is the GitHub repository, what it looks like. Each directory holds one of the tests. Starting off with the first one I created, it's the natural language testing. That's a test that has every language we support in the toolkit. If you include the language variants, I think it's something over 50 now. And so I've got a test map for every one of those. Inside the map, I have topics that include every element where we generate text, like notes or chapters or tables, anything that has a generated string to go with it that's localized. So by building all of those, I can verify, and when I first created this, I did verify that we were missing some strings from a particular language. We'd forgotten to put in the word chapter for Serbian or something like that. So those are all in sync now. We don't get those errors. I've also included one test file for a language that we don't support. Currently, that is Welsh. So Lee White comes a little further along in her education and adds that for us. I know she's been taking those lessons. So you can use that one to see what happens when you have a language that you don't support. In addition to testing every string, these files have every character that should appear in the alphabet used by that language, which is useful for index testing. You can verify that the index is sorted properly and that the proper headings are generated. With the Latin languages, you can also see that where, for the particular language you have, a traditional Unicode sort happens to put special characters like accented A's and E's. So I find this one pretty useful, and also useful when we've customized things inside IBM with our own strings. I can quickly throw them in here and verify that I've got everything in place, because if it works in English, it needs to work everywhere. The next set is bookmap. I realized that when I started testing, it didn't seem like anyone had tried this. Creating a bookmap that uses every bookmap element and see what happens. Because there are a bunch in there that people don't use or don't tend to use together. People who generate table lists don't always, well, there aren't very many people who write their manual table list and reference one, but you can do that. So I've got that in there. I've tried testing chapters and chapters within parts, appendices and appendices within the appendixes container. This helped flesh out a number of small defects, both in the toolkit itself, a few of them, but more importantly in our customizations where we'd created custom processing and realized that some of these structures didn't work in our custom processing. Crawling, getting back to that link crawling issue we discussed earlier that has a new option in DITA-OT 3.2. This is what happens, testing what happens when you link to a file that has links, or link to a file that has conrefs, or conref to a file that has links, and there are lots of combinations you can get into there. And the results are sometimes surprising for people who are not wise in the ways of the toolkit. So this is also useful just for demonstrating to people the repercussions of different information strategies, content strategies. And I apparently just minimized the screen. There we go. This is somewhat similar. Degrees of linking. If you link to a file that links to a file that links to a file that links 6 different levels away from the map. I ran into a set of content recently that linked 30 topics away from the map. So the first thing you linked to wasn't there, then it linked to something that wasn't there. It went on for 30 links before you found a file that had a parsing error. And so, of course, when the parsing error shows up in the log, nobody has any idea what's going on. Why is this file being mentioned? So this is a good way to illustrate the issues involved in that. And that is in particular the issue I was trying to fix with the new link crawling parameter. This was just kind of a random one. I realized that people were starting to link to elements I didn't expect. I mentioned earlier the links to title elements. That got me thinking, what happens when you link to every other element in DITA? And so I've got a test that has an ID for every element you can put an ID on in DITA, and I link to them. And now work in PDF, whether you want them to or not. A couple of them were acting funny in HTML, but anything that I can possibly imagine people linking to is working. Another one for testing customizations, metadata. This came up when somebody submitted a pull request against the toolkit to add a bunch of metadata onto covers. And by default, these few metadata items should always appear on the cover. And so I thought, from that code, it looks like other things might accidentally slip through. And so I created this map that was every metadata element in a map and in bookmap. And I tried running those through, and sure enough, all kinds of random garbage suddenly showed up on the cover. So this is a good way for testing, in particular, cover customizations where you're trying to add metadata or any, front matter notices that you're trying to generate. And again, these are not useful at all for automated testing. This is all just try your customization and see what it actually looks like. Again, on the thought that people will do anything if they can do it, what happens when you have a list and a list and a list and a list and a list? I tried that with lists, topics, figures, a bunch of different elements that can contain themselves to find out what happens when you carry your style to extremes. How many things run off the page or come up with ridiculous formatting or where your numbering breaks, something like that. And then one that's actually proven useful out in the wild, OASIS Doctypes, a set of samples that uses DITA-OT, every standard configuration that comes from OASIS for DITA-10, 11, 12, 13, using all of the grammar files that are supported, as well as a beta version of DITA-2.0, which is not too far along, but is up there. And that 2.0 version has come in handy actually at OASIS itself, where we work on the standard. We've set up a continuous integration test so that if somebody creates a suggested change to DITA 2.0, whether it's removing elements, adding elements, in any way affecting grammar files, we automatically run it against these very simple topics just to see if their grammar file change still parses. Because you might be surprised, but most people, when they try to make a suggested change to a DTD, will break something the first time they try it. I'm including myself in that. Most people will break the DTD the first time, and then they find out later and have to fix it. This is an easy way to recognize that, and I've found it's better to find those errors and fix them before you show them to the world. So this is what this is intended to help with that. And probably more to come. I do like creating weird edge case test cases. So if you have any suggestions, let me know, or if you have your own, I would like to link to them from here. This is the URL for the repo that just has all these sample docs. And I probably should add some of the information that I've created for this into READMEs for each of these samples. I think some of them have it, most of them don't. Hopefully they will prove useful. And if you would like to contribute anything, please let me know, or contribute any ideas. Anything? No? No ideas? Yes?
When you have foreign characters like, I don't know, Chinese or what have you, do you include testing for that for monospace fonts, for title fonts, and so on? Because sometimes they just come up, if you're using special fonts, it just comes up as tofu.
I have not tested those for fonts. That's an interesting idea. I try to include a lot of those characters that you might not expect, not exhaustive. I don't have a test page for English that includes all the different Unicode characters, but I do try to include all of the traditional Latin ones and ones from various Western European languages that are more common. So I have all of those in there. I don't have them tested for different fonts though. But I have seen those errors, so yeah, it's a good idea. Any others? Okay, I have no more work to do.
Thank you.